To me, my X-Men.
As someone who's grown up watching superhero cartoons during the 90s, I never expected a new era of animated shows to match the standards. But X-Men 97 has been more than a perfect follow-up for the iconic X-Men the Animated Series, and the ongoing second season has captured some of the finest comic book stories and added its own unique spin to them. In fact, what I love the most in this series is the way it celebrates the entire history of the X-Men, and this includes all the multiple mutant teams from the comic book history. Now, not all of them have a similar representation or similar members that they do in the comics, because the circumstances of their creation is also different at times. But the very mention of these team-ups reminds the fans of the references. So far, we've been introduced to several such teams, including the time when the X-Men themselves have been separated into two groups scattered across timelines. In this video, I'll explore each and every team in the show, and I'll also talk about their importance going ahead.
No more holding it in. Let's end this with a bang!
X-Corp. If you try to put a chokehold on Charles Xavier and his activities, he'll always find a way to bypass the obstacles created for him. The X-Corp is one of the more recent inventions in the show, and I think it's one of the smartest creations meant to exploit a loophole in the established government order. You see, the US government has disbanded the X-Men and does not recognize their jurisdiction. The smart solution was to go corporate, and that is precisely what Professor Xavier's done. He's come up with a global, independent mutant organization which allows him to bypass the US government bans and legal restrictions that have been implemented against the X-Men. This ban came courtesy of the mutant-hating public and the orders of President Robert Kelly, who outlaws the X-Men in the United States. The X-Corp is created as an international outreach and platform that will safeguard mutants all over the world and outside American jurisdiction. It's supposed to act as a proactive response to the rising global hostility against mutants, and Xavier also hasn't forgotten the impending threat of apocalypse that looms large on this timeline. The team is led by Xavier and features some of the core members of the X-Men like Beast, Bishop, Cyclops, Jean Grey, Nightcrawler, Polaris, and Rogue. The others like Storm, Wolverine, Morph, and any other mutant who believes in the cause might join later. Founded on Genosha, this group not only looks to operate outside US jurisdiction, but also looks to undo the wrongs of the government, and this immediately puts it at odds with Cooper, who raises questions about the legitimacy of the group. Of course, after Creed is kidnapped by the Acolytes, it turns out to be the X-Corp who saved the day, and maybe this has given them an extended run without government intervention. I think that the X-Corp has its task cut out in the show, and the way they've dealt with the Acolytes is only the beginning. One successful mission will not define them, especially at a time when a bigger crisis awaits to be handled. I sense a team-up possibility, where the X-Corp allies with the remaining X-Men and even X-Force if required. If you recall the comic book lore, you might even remember that the X-Corp came up after one of the darkest days in the history of the X-Men. After Xavier's twin sister Cassandra Nova unleashed a mutant massacre on Genosha, she also took over his body and made him reveal on live TV that he was a mutant. With so many mutants dead and his secret spilled, Professor Xavier formed the X-Corp to deal with the crisis. But both the show version and the circumstances behind the formation of the X-Corp are very different from the comics.
Oh, please, don't hurt us.
Don't worry, son. We won't hurt you.
X-Factor. It seems like the government's learning a thing or two from Professor Xavier, and they formed the team X-Factor to keep track of mutant activities, especially the ones that might be illegal or endanger humans. You have to consider the societal situation in this hostile world, where Xavier's dreams of mutant-human coexistence is still a distant dream. Mutants are generally hated and feared, and the government ultimately bows down to the people and pressure groups that want the mutants to be under scrutiny. That's exactly the purpose of X-Factor, which includes Polaris, Multiple Man, Wolfsbane, Strong Guy, and Havoc. I think one of the highlights of this team is how they have two underrated but powerful members of the X-Men among their ranks. I'm talking about Polaris, the daughter of Magneto, and Havoc, the brother of Cyclops. Havoc is the leader of the group, and he believes in their philosophy and what they're assigned to do. Polaris is more of the rebel, who questions some of the methods and assignments. Also, for those who don't know, Strong Guy can absorb and redirect kinetic energy, and he's quite a useful fighter. Both Wolfsbane and Multiple Man have significant powers, but they've never been utilized as top-tier mutants. Ultimately, you can't give X-Factor a lot of credit for what they do because they simply toe the government line. It's not like Havoc is free to make his own decisions, and he just obeys the orders of Valerie Cooper, who in turn takes her orders from President Robert Kelly. You could say that the team members function as superpowered jailers and puppets that don't shy away from imprisoning young mutants who are deemed as potential threats to national security. I love the fact that someone as free-spirited as Polaris doesn't remain with X-Factor for long, and she ultimately rejoins the X-Men. Given how important her role is in defeating Danger in one episode, I see this as a key figure in the absence of Magneto, who can pose a challenge for Apocalypse. I just hope that some of the other members of the team also realize what they've been reduced to, because they're forced to do such unethical things against their own kind. As of now, their mind is shrouded in propaganda, and whatever the government tells them seems true. But I'm sure they'll realize the futility of their mission at some point. I wouldn't be surprised if more members from X Factor choose to abandon the team and join the X-Men or a team that matters. As much as I realize that the members of X Factor are ultra powerful, I can't help but remember the X Factor that we saw in the X-Men animated series. This version was heavily inspired by the 90s comic book lineup of X Factor, and some major changes have been made in X-Men 97. For instance, Forge is no longer associated with X Factor, and Valerie Cooper is the leader of the pack. Also, Quicksilver is famously absent here, and I think the significance of the team has been toned down. They rely heavily on government resources and the green light given to them for various missions. And maybe without the right help, they wouldn't even succeed. Let's not forget that they needed the assistance of Emma Frost to trap the members of X-Force in one episode. And now with Polaris gone, they've been significantly weakened. Also, the way Polaris is made to quit is quite intriguing because she wasn't exactly wrong in her attack. But the orders were not given for her to act as she did. Insubordination is a serious issue here, and Polaris is happy to quit because she's long hated the spineless activities of this group. Yeah, they're still one of the most organized and disciplined teams out there, but I wonder how effective they'll be in a real crisis.
Don't bring a gun to a fist fight.
X-Force. There might be various teams around, but this one's probably the most unlikely mix of mutants working together for a common cause. The X-Force in X-Men 97 comprise of Cable, Jubilee, Sunspot, Psylocke, and Archangel. And I love how this allows an opportunity for underrated characters like Psylocke and Archangel to have more screen time. Not to mention Jubilee, who's probably the best X-Men adaptation of her character to date. Cable's more like the leader of the group, and his personality and methodology clashes with Jubilee, and this makes for an interesting group dynamic. In a way, they directly oppose the actions of X Factor, which puts them at odds with the team and the US government. But the likes of Cable and Jubilee don't care about appeasing anyone. Cable in particular is willing to do just about anything to get the job done, and he doesn't care about sacrificing his own people if required. Jubilee, on the other hand, is more ethical and bound by morals, and she's not okay with Cable's methods, and even the headstrong Cable has to sometimes give in to her demands. We all know about the value that Cable adds to the team as the dangerous mutant soldier. He's probably one of the most efficient leaders in the entire franchise, and I think his presence alone makes the group one to be taken seriously. His telepathic and telekinetic abilities, alongside his knowledge of advanced future technology and decades of combat, make him one of the best in the business. Even his team members are equally impressive, and Psylocke is an expert psychic, whereas Angel combines his flight abilities and super strength with his razor-sharp metal wings. Sunspot has powerful solar abilities that grants the team significant firepower, and Jubilee is growing more confident in her powers by the day. In fact, the latest episode hands the X-Force another crucial twist in the climactic moments. Cable leads the team into one of Apocalypse's secret lairs, but what they find in there is absolutely shocking. They discover the shriveled and decaying corpse of Apocalypse, and Jubilee spots a playing card, which clearly belongs to Gambit. We've already seen that Gambit has been resurrected by Apocalypse, and I wonder how this surprising death scene plays into the story, even though I'm quite sure that Apocalypse hasn't died at all. Maybe he's moved into another physical vessel, or maybe the dead Apocalypse is from the future timeline. But the 1990s will still see his might against the X-Men. Can the X-Force play a crucial role in defeating the mighty Apocalypse? I'm sure they'll have a major part in it, especially because the prophecy around Cable being the one who can get the job done. Also, it will be unfortunate if a spirited member like Jubilee doesn't get to shine when the crisis is the worst. And this might be the best way for her to prove her usefulness to Professor Xavier once again. It's only fitting that the show has brought back the X-Force because it's been a crucial detail from the 1990s comics. Since X-Men the Animated Series never featured this group, I think it's about time to have them in the show, especially with the value that they add to the story. The Acolytes. I cannot appreciate the writing enough in X-Men 97, because while they managed to take crucial parts of the comics, they also add their own innovation and fit them into the show's narrative. One such example is that of the Acolytes of Magneto, an extremist group of mutants formed to safeguard mutant interests and get back at a hateful human society. The context is brilliant, where we see one of the most rational and ethical mutants, Colossus, stray from his views after the mutant massacre on Genosha. He lost his sister in the attack, and the personal loss convinced him that the humans cannot be reasoned with. He joined the militant mutant group, led by Mutant Supremacy. One of their daring missions involved kidnapping of the anti-mutant leader, Graydon Creed. He was spewing his hate against mutants during one of his rallies, where he was aspiring to run for president, and this was interrupted by the Acolytes, who stormed the place and took down the guards. Graydon Creed was taken prisoner, and the Acolytes announced themselves with a demand to have every mutant imprisoned by X-Factor. They set up a base on the Savage Land, where they intend to be a safe house for mutants. Cooper realized that this has taken a dangerous turn, and even Professor Xavier understood that this could trigger a violent human-mutant conflict. He sent his X-Men, or the X-Corp as it's now known, to deal with the situation, and the likes of Nightcrawler, Beast, Polaris, and Bishop get the job done. Nightcrawler demands a fair trial for his brother, Graydon Creed, and even though it turns out that Creed is too far gone, Colossus is still able to see the bigger picture. Exodus is far too extremist and concerned little about the true well-being of the mutants, and Colossus joins the X-Men as Exodus is killed in the skirmish that follows. This marks an important victory for the X-Corp as Graydon Creed is retrieved alive as promised, and more importantly, they have a reliable member like Colossus back in their ranks. You might remember the group from Season 4 of the original X-Men the Animated Series, and they find mention in the comics, where they first appeared in X-Men Volume 2, Number 1 from 1991. Here, Magneto was the leader of the group, and he gathered a group of mutant followers and called them the Acolytes. Among them, one of the most important members was Fabian Cortez, who is not available in X-Men 97, and of course, Magneto has already been killed by Apocalypse. As a result, the show version is largely led by Exodus, even though Colossus has a major voice. Now, Exodus is dead and Colossus has left the team, which probably means that the group is scattered and no longer a threat. Moreover, with greater dangers lurking around, it's hardly a good time for infighting among mutants. Team X. I know we've only seen Team X in one episode of X-Men 97, but boy hasn't it been a memorable one. The episode titled Weapon X Lies in DVDs is probably the only time that the story's gone sideways, but we don't mind at all because it's reunited the infamous Team X for one mission. Wolverine and Morph are able to gather together Logan's former hit squad, Team X, and the members include Sabretooth, Lady Deathstrike, Maverick, and Garrison Kane. Their mission is to track down a Weapon X facility and get back at Dr. Abraham Cornelius. But Wolverine has a secret agenda that is hidden away for much of the episode. As they approach the mysterious facility, their helicopter takes a hit from mutated birds and they crash. Kane is killed from the impact and the survivors are left to fend for themselves in a hostile terrain consisting of mutated animals. They finally reach the facility only to find it in ruins, and even an encounter with Dr. Cornelius takes an unexpected turn when he mutates into an alien creature. It's soon discovered that Cornelius was planning to use a hive-mind alien species called the Brood on his test subjects. But the experiment didn't exactly go as planned. Now the entire facility is overrun by the Brood. And to make matters worse, Wolverine gets infected as he tries to access an adamantium chamber. He transforms into a feral version of himself, and there's an epic fight scene featuring him and Sabretooth after he kills Maverick. He also accidentally releases Omega Red, and it's only after rebonding Wolverine with adamantium that purges his DNA of the Brood. In the process, he also regains his adamantium claws back, which, as you might remember, were gone courtesy of Magneto. Omega Red is defeated and the facility is destroyed along with the Brood. But Morph now realizes that Wolverine risked all their lives only to get his adamantium back. It strains their relationship because Morph has always taken a liking to Wolverine, and he gets a reality check about how Wolverine is ultimately a killing machine. What I love the most about this team is the group dynamic, because it's a mix of friends and foes. You'll have arch rivals like Wolverine and Sabretooth in the same place, and tensions are bound to rise. Also, Lady Deathstrike happens to be Wolverine's former love interest, so there's some tension there as well. The banter between the group is fun to watch, and ultimately they all fight together to get out of a tricky situation. I don't know if we'll see this team reunite in the future, but as of now, surely you wouldn't want to be a part of anything that has Wolverine in it, given how he risked all their lives only to regain his lost adamantium. X-Men 3960 AD. I know this isn't really a separate mutant group, but the first season ended on a cliffhanger that was revealed to be the X-Men scattered across timelines. One group found itself in ancient Egypt in 3000 BC, while the other landed in the distant future of 3960 AD. So I'll explore both of these teams and their actions as separate X-Men groups. After Forge develops a time machine, he goes to the future timeline, which also happens to be at the height of Apocalypse's power. The other X-Men stuck in this timeline are Wolverine, Storm, Morph, Cyclops, and Jean Grey, and he soon reunites with them. Cyclops and Jean have an emotional reunion with their son, Nathan, who they'd sent to the future timeline earlier because of his techno-organic disease. In this futuristic world, the only substantial opposition to Apocalypse's regime is the Ascani clan, and they see Nathan as someone special, who according to the prophecy will bring down Apocalypse. Meanwhile, Apocalypse wants to use Nathan as a new physical vessel, and Cyclops and Jean get captured. Also, it's revealed that it's Mother Ascani who transported the X-Men through time. The group traveling in this timeline is supposed to train Nathan to be better. And finally, Cyclops and Jean reveal to Nathan that they're his parents. He's able to discover the true potential of his powers as he breaks them free and they escape alongside the other X-Men. Ultimately, they all have to return to their original timeline in the 90s, and it's a painful goodbye as Nathan learns to let them go for the greater good. He also merges with Apocalypse's ship computer that sends him on the path to become Cable. And in the 90s, you can already see Cable and his team as they track down Apocalypse. I think the future X-Men team is extremely important in this regard because they give Nathan the push that he needed to find himself. Moreover, they strengthen the Ascani clan in this fight during their stay, and there are some memorable encounters as they take on Apocalypse's forces on multiple occasions.
That age begins now.
X-Men 3000 BC. While the team of X-Men assembled in the future timeline is supposed to train Nathan to be the warrior that he's supposed to become, the X-Men sent to ancient Egypt are supposed to prevent the rise of the mutant En-Sabah-Nur, who goes on to become the dreaded Apocalypse. This team includes Professor Xavier, Magneto, Beast, Rogue, and Nightcrawler, as they come across the young mutant En-Sabah-Nur in the era of the oppressive regime of Pharaoh Rama-Tut, who uses future technology to enslave his people. Magneto tries to convey Xavier's philosophy to Nur, and he attempts to make him the first X-Man who can rewrite history. Meanwhile, Xavier's apprehensive about this plan because he's fearful of what Nur can turn into as Apocalypse. After some interesting turns of events, Nur and his Sandstormers find out about the X-Men's plans involving the futuristic technology, and he feels betrayed. Also, the arrival of Bishop is just in time for the X-Men to have some much-needed support. Xavier's able to convince Nur once again, and they set out to find the ancient temple that houses the fallen celestial Isan in the ship, which would eventually become Apocalypse's weapon. There are inscriptions inside that show Nur his future, and he's now obsessed with power, ignoring the requests of the X-Men. He acquires the great powers and turns into Apocalypse, and he launches a black hole at the city of Rama-Tut. Magneto uses all his powers to stop the catastrophe, but in the process is severely injured. Later, Apocalypse kills him in front of Professor Xavier, who's transported back to the 90s alongside the other X-Men in the future. It's now a fight to be won in the present timeline, but in spite of their failed attempt and the loss of Magneto, the X-Men in the past did everything they could to prevent the inevitable rise of Apocalypse. It's just that they were racing against fate, and it was a battle that was never meant to be won there in the first place. The X-Men. This is the OG group, and the one that is the undisputed leader of them all. The X-Men formed by Professor Xavier are easily the powerhouse that leads the charge, and all the other groups that I've discussed so far are either a faction of their own or not powerful enough to challenge them. Yes, the current X-Men have changed themselves into the X-Corp, but technicalities aside, the X-Men have been the real heroes all this while. When Xavier was gone in the Shi'ar Empire, Cyclops and Jean were left as the leaders, and the group included everyone from Wolverine to Storm to Beast and all the others. Now I see the likes of Bishop and Colossus, strengthening the group further, even though they're split up to take care of various issues. Storm has been placed as the principal of the Xavier School, which continues its legacy to educate the mutant students and turn them into better individuals who are above petty violence and misuse of their powers. The X-Corp has already separated the X-Men, and as of now, Wolverine and Morph are MIA, and Storm is caught up in something that she'll probably need to abandon temporarily to deal with the threat of Apocalypse. I don't know about the Onslaught story arc, but something's up with Professor Xavier, who's now more firm in his decision-making. The loss of his friend Magneto has affected him immensely, and I don't see this getting any better. The X-Men is the only constant among all the teams that I've discussed so far, and they're the ones who will have a major role to play if the world during the 90s timeline is to have any chance of defeating Apocalypse and his horsemen. The show is really set for a grand finale, and I couldn't be any happier. Each one of the groups that I've discussed in this video have a key role to play in the story, and none of these have been introduced just for the sake of it. Some of the groups, like the Acolytes or the X-Men from the past and future timelines, might not be active now, but the others are still very much a part of the main story. I'm curious to see how they're used in the future of the show, and I'm quite confident that you might see a few of these groups coming together for the bigger mission, which is evidently Apocalypse and his horsemen. Let me know in the comments below what you think of these mutant groups, and also share your favorite ones among them. Like the video, subscribe to our channel, and ring that notification bell so when we get more Mutant Mayhem videos, you'll find out first. Stay safe, have a great day, and as always, stay marvelous.